Good morning. Welcome to the Spring Meetings Dialogues. This annual series is launched by the Atlantic Council's Africa Center on the occasion of the 2022 IMF and World Bank Spring Meetings. The goal is to raise the African voices during these strategic gatherings around the development matters and advance the African agenda in Washington, D.C. In a critical period marked by the consequences of the COVID-19 and the war in Ukraine. As you know, the Council is a platform for a better knowledge of Africa and for the promotion of opportunities on the African continent. During this key week, the Africa Center has hosted Scott Nathan, the new CEO of the Development Finance Corporation, or tomorrow, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, President of the African Development Bank. Today, we are delighted to welcome the Minister of Finance and National Planning of the Republic of Zambia, Dr. Situmbeko Musokotwane. Mr. Minister, you have been appointed Minister of your country last August in the first government of the new President Hichilema. His historic election was a peaceful political transition that was an inspiration to the rest of the continent and even the world. Like he said to Vice President Kamala Harris when she hosted him at the White House a few weeks after his election. President Hichilema has tasked you to ensure that Zambia's economy improves. Fortunately, you are not new in this position. You already held during 4 years under the Rupia Banda administration, who died last month. You are an economist in monetary economics, which can be helpful in your discussions with the IMF. You are also a member of the parliament. You also acted as an alternate governor at the IMF, the African Development Bank, and the World Bank. Mr. Minister Musokotwane, welcome the Atlantic Council.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. To start, a few words about President Hichilema, elected to everyone's surprise last August against Edgar Lungu. The new head of state has adopted a radically different style from his predecessor. He's a supporter of economic and political liberalism since he was a former businessman. May I ask you to remind first to our audience the roadmap he gave you. What is your mission at the head of the finance ministry?
The ministry that I lead, and thank you very much for that, the ministry that I lead is called the Minister of Finance and National Planning. Okay. So there's the element of the finance, but there's also the element of coordinating to making sure that the economy gets into the right path. What is the right path for the economy? For us, obviously, like everywhere else in the world, what we are aspiring to achieve is consistent growth in the economy. Year after year, the economy must grow, and not by small amounts, by large amounts, because the constituency that elected President Hichilema in office is largely made up of young people. Zambia is a young country with young people. So the biggest issue is how to generate employment opportunities, good employment opportunities. So that is the key to generate growth that will lead to poverty reduction, that will lead to wealth, that will lead to more tax revenue coming from a stronger economy with which we can finance critical social services such as education, health, and so forth. So the war cry is more and more growth. Yes.
And when you left the Ministry of Finance before, the Zambian economic growth has reached a high level, more than 7%, right?
Yes.
Since then, the situation has worsened because of the COVID-19 effects, of course. Real GDP contracted a lot after growing by 4% in 2018 and less than 2% in 2019. The output contraction is the result of a historic deterioration in all key sectors of the economy. In this context, and regarding the COVID impact, what do you plan to do to contain specifically these effects for the economic recovery of your country?
Yeah, COVID obviously has played a part in the contraction of the economy, but we must also be mindful of the fact that at the human level, the impact of COVID in Africa, such as Zambia, was not as catastrophic as it was in many other parts of the country, part of the world. So the issue then were, what were the key drivers in the stagnation of the economy? In my view, the key drivers was, first of all, the excessive borrowing that took place, leading to a debt crisis. And of course, part of my mission here is how can we get to debt resolution? So excessive borrowing. On top of that, an investment climate that was not really conducive to attracting private capital. The period of growth that we're talking about was a period when so much money was attracted in the mining sector. So the mining sector became the locomotive of economic growth. In the last 10 years, that did not happen. The opposite happened. So our job now is to re-establish a conducive environment so that there's more prospecting, there's more mining, there's more other businesses that are related to mining that can grow out of mining, to attract more money into agriculture, to attract more money into energy. So basically, our mission is, through this growth, is how do we attract money into the economy so that jobs are created, tax revenues increase. But of course, you know that there's the problem of this indebtedness, the debt crisis.
Yeah.
It is a harder job.
Yeah, we'll come to the debt crisis with our fellow Tom Cock later. But you're right, it's absolutely important.
It's a harder job to attract private capital in the economy, which everyone sees is bankrupt.
Yeah.
So we need to resolve this matter.
Exactly. And you had to resolve this matter. And since then, as you know, the world, or at least Europe, has been hit by this war in Ukraine, with global effects, though. Of course, because Russia plays an important role in commodities. Russia is the world's largest, third largest oil producer, the second largest crude oil exporter. Africa could be severely hit by this, by the impact of sanctions against Russia, and similarly, economic experts project that gas prices will rise like wheat prices. The prices of all these products, oil, fertilizers, wheat, which should be a major concern for the Zambian government, like others. What are your thoughts on this? How do you appreciate the impact of the prices, the new prices on your economy? What's your strategy?
Yes, the war in the Eastern Europe is most very, very unfortunate. You look at the human suffering coming out of it, it's devastating. How is that affecting us? We don't depend on the Russians or Ukraine for food, because our staple food is maize. We grow enough, we export. Similarly for wheat, we grow enough. So I think we are not worried about the food. If anything, we would say that given the land resources that we have, one of the narratives that we have is when I talked about creating a more conducive environment for investment. We have lots of land, water, so we are marketing the country for investment. For those who want to come and make money in Zambia, make profit in Zambia by growing all types of food, which they can export to other places in the world. So yes, it is a catastrophe, but we also see an opportunity arising out of that. Where we are hit, it is on the issue of the energy. We, of course, import petroleum products. Most of our products come from the Middle East, but it's one integrated world market. If there's disruption, as there is in Russia, clearly there will be disruption elsewhere in the world. So the petroleum prices have gone up. It is unfortunate. We have explained to our people, because there's been a pressure for subsidies. We've explained to our people, we've pleaded to our people that the subsidies that the government wants to put in place are those that support the poorest of the poor. Hiring teachers so that children have teachers. Making education free so that no one is left behind. Mm-hmm. Recruiting more nurses and medical staff. Building more classrooms, more desks. We believe that putting money into those areas provides better support to the poorest of the poor, rather than putting the subsidy on the petroleum. We understand it is painful, but we must focus on who is the most vulnerable. This is what we've done as far as the petroleum products is. But I also want to say that with these high prices, obviously there will be adjustment in the world economy. Mm-hmm. The move towards cleaner form of energy is actually going to accelerate, given the high prices. Okay, we'll talk about
precisely. You said this crisis could be an opportunity. Yeah. Russia supplies the world with about 10% of its nickel needs, mainly for use of stainless steel and electric vehicle batteries. The prices of the metal more relevant for Zambia is obviously copper. Mm-hmm. Prices are going up too. And Zambia is the second largest copper producer. And the increase in the prices of this metal is a good thing, which may help to mitigate some of the negative effects of the war. Right. And the Zambian president recently stressed the emergency, like you just did, to push plans for alternative energy solutions, including electric vehicles that will depend on batteries from local minerals in the country, such as copper. So this market is expected to grow a lot, like 50 billion in 2025. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How will you do this? How will you reach this goal?
Yes, I think we are starting by saying this energy crisis is also creating opportunities. Mm-hmm. One of those is the push towards cleaner forms of energy. Part of that push is, as most car manufacturers in the world have stated, in the next 10, 15, 20 years, no more petrol engines, no more diesel engines. What will they use? Electrical motors. Electrical motors is essentially copper. So one of those things that we are working very hard on is to create conditions that are conducive within Zambia for most of these electrical motors to be made right there. And I want to appeal to major corporations, especially those who have big assembly plants in South Africa, whether it's BMW, whether it's Mercedes-Benz, whether it's Volkswagen. I'm not sure about American car corporations, if they have assembly plants in South Africa, and if they are thinking of cutting down on petrol and diesel engines, please come and make your electrical motors in Zambia. It's only 1,500 kilometers away from South Africa where your plants are. Makes good business case for them. So if they are listening to me, we welcome you to Zambia to come and make those electrical motors.
I think they heard the message. Let's see, just forgive me for that, beyond Zambia. Africa is the hub of green technologies, obviously. Let's talk about the COP, the last one, Glasgow, was obviously a failure. Africans who were not able to speak. Some of them from the civil organizations were on red list because of COVID and could not attend at the very beginning. Africa is responsible for only 4% of gas emissions in the world, but pay the highest price, floods, deforestation, all these things. It's not a threat, but a reality, global warming. So you, President, and others, President of Uganda, Zambia, Vice President of Nigeria, political leaders, African political leaders had called for a just transition that recognized African development needs at that occasion, on that occasion. The negative impact of COVID-19, the decrease of revenues, all these things put these countries in difficult situation. But in the meantime, the need in financing the green projects is important and very high. So from the continental perspective, what do you expect from Egypt? What is your strategy for the next COP27 that will take place on the African continent in Egypt?
Well, I think the first thing is once again, the leaders, economic leaders of this world who made commitment about providing financing for these initiatives, they must live up to their word. Okay? They must live up to their word. For us, as we push for people to live up to their words, we cannot just sit back and wait for the world to be nice to us. We also must take initiatives. And in that regard, for us, we are, again, moving aggressively to attract the capital, to come and invest into solar energy, because the conditions in Zambia are very good for that. We've seen some investment being done in solar energy. We are also making reforms of the energy sector within our country so that this clean energy can become part of the trading, energy trading within the country. So this is what we are doing. Yes, there are challenges, but for every situation where there's a challenge, opportunities exist. And those are the ones that you must push very hard to gain from.
Minister, we have 2 minutes together before I give the floor to Tom Cook.
Right.
So I have just one last question, and I would like to come back to the copper issue or opportunity. Goldman Sachs published a few months ago a note about copper as the new oil. And we talked about the opportunities in Zambia, but you have a neighbor, an important neighbor, the DRC, who is also an important producer of copper. Right. And here, 60% of the world's cobalt too, so that's a lot. But the eastern part of this country is in war since like maybe 3 decades. And that's the geopolitical or security aspect I would like to ask you about. Even if the opportunities exist in this sector of energy, we have this instability in the DRC. How do you see how could we pacify more that region? What are the solutions to keep Congolese safe in their own country? We said how historic the election of your president has been a few months ago, and that's not the case in the DRC, and you need to take advantage of these opportunities from the soil. You need peace in your neighborhood. What's your thoughts about that?
We work very closely with all the peacemaking efforts that are there. Zambia is a member of the so-called Great Lakes Initiative. We provide our premises, provide our people to help in their peacemaking process. But beyond that, we also work very closely with the DRC. Their president and my president are good friends. There will be economic cooperation around the copper and cobalt. By the way, there's also cobalt in Zambia. So we are cooperating to see whether some of these initiatives around copper and cobalt can be jointly undertaken, because we believe that when there's economic prosperity on both sides, that is also one arsenal towards peace.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Musokotwane. I would like now to give the floor to my colleague, Tom Koch, to dig deeper on economic and budget, fiscal issues. You are an economist, so I'm sure you'll do good.
Okay. Yes, please. Tom?
Tom, we cannot hear you. I think you are muted.
Yes. Thank you, Ron. And good I'm glad that you're able to join us at the Atlantic Council today, Mr. Minister. Rama, rightfully so, started asking some questions about the future of the Zambian economy, and you started to allude to issues with debt restructuring, and that's where I'd like to begin. You rightfully say that it's a major concern for the Zambian government, and I think most foreign investors would agree with you. Zambia became the first country really to default in the COVID environment in October 2020 under roughly $32 billion of debt. The specific default was on roughly $3 billion in Eurobonds, dollar-denominated Eurobonds. And the debt for the economy was at roughly 120% of GDP. Interestingly, roughly a quarter of this debt was owed to China in various forms, in various state-owned enterprises. One of the interesting things is a lot of this Chinese debt was being used for large-scale infrastructure projects and some military procurement. So I think what would be interesting to hear your perspective on is an update on the debt restructuring discussions, your view of the way forward, and what China's role will be in these discussions as they take place.
Thank you very much. And indeed, that is one of the key things that we are dealing with here since our arrival in Washington, how to make advancement on this debt and sustainability. The path towards the resolution of the debt has always been defined very clearly. For a country such as Zambia, you get into a discussion with the IMF. They will facilitate, if they are happy with their what you've agreed to implement with them, then they would facilitate conversation with their creditors around the table so that we can agree on how to restructure that debt so that it is sustainable. One way or another, it must be restructured so that it's sustainable. Once the debt is sustainable, we resume to paying the debt, because we want to pay our debt so that tomorrow when we need to borrow, we can come back and borrow. So we need to resume to pay the debts, but also the repayments must be affordable. Today it is not affordable, so it is a crisis. We have done our part as a country. The discussions that we held with the IMF and all the other partners towards an agreement with the IMF, that was agreed upon long ago by the end of last year. So what was remaining now, the issue of how the G20 and all the Paris Club and around the so-called common framework of how the creditors can all come together and discuss with us, that's what we've been waiting to see be set up. Unfortunately, we are now in the 4th month from the time when we thought would quickly move to the discussion with the creditors. Nothing is happening. So we've come here to complain and also to discuss with the leaders of the G20, the leaders of the common framework. You made a commitment. We also made a commitment. We have lived up to our part of the commitment in terms of implementing those things that we agreed we would do. Can we also see a movement? Can we see action on the part of those who helped, those who said they were going to assist? It is rather unfortunate because for persons like me, this is the second time that I'm going through this kind of process, because I was there during the days of HIPIC, and the contrast between those days and now is that when pronouncements were made then to say this is the framework, this is the path towards that framework, those commitments were quickly delivered. Okay? Today, those commitments, they've remained in words, but no implementation. So honestly, we are of the view that this matter needs to be resolved. This matter needs to be resolved.
Thanks, Mr. Minister. That your words are well taken. I think a lot of global investors are very interested in the outcome of the debt restructuring discussions. And another issue that dovetails nicely into how the outcome could impact the world's view on the attractiveness of Zambia is in the realm of tech. And you alluded to these in your comments earlier. Many African investors today are fixated on African tech, rightfully so. African tech has raised over $5 billion in 2021, which is a record. However, most of this focus has been on what we call the Big Four: Egypt, Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa. But interestingly, I think Zambia is starting to have a little bit of success. You see a company called Union 54 recently raised, I think it was $12 million in a seed round. You also have people like the Ethereum co-founder reportedly working with the public and private sector in Zambia to really think through how to make the business and regulatory framework more conducive to foreign capital and entrepreneurs. In this light, what is Zambia really doing today to make itself a more attractive destination for entrepreneurs, particularly tech entrepreneurs, investors, and workers? And I will add that we have a portfolio company investment in Zambia, and one of their chief concerns that we talk to them about is getting adequate labor and really dealing with the labor law in Zambia and how to attract top talent. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Thank you. And indeed, we see private sector as the main tool, as the main instrument that is going to get rid of poverty and move the country forward. To answer your question specifically, the President and Cabinet, we have committed ourselves to doing whatever is necessary for the investment climate to be as good as we can get it to be. And in that regard, I want to tell you that within about 2 weeks from now, the President is going to launch an initiative, a dialogue initiative between the private sector and the government. And the way it's going to work is that sector by sector or project by project, especially those big ones, will ask the actors in the private sector, can you tell us the kind of headaches, the kind of inconvenience that government is giving you, so that we sort out those problems so that you can do your business as comfortably as possible. So, sitting together with the private sector, they will lay out their issues, agree on a framework for resolving those issues, we resolve them, and we deliver to the private sector as they wish. There is 100% commitment out of that from our President, from the Cabinet. And the good thing is that the President, being a businessman, he understands these things very well because he went through so much frustrations himself in the days when he was doing active business. So he is 100% committed to that, 100% committed to that.
Mr. Minister, I love your enthusiasm. I love the idea of a dialogue between the public and private sector. And I thank you for your comments, and I look forward to seeing you in Lusaka in the short term.
Thank you. And please, I look forward to seeing you in Lusaka also.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tom. As you heard, Tom spoke a lot about tech and private sector. He's a member of the Atlantic Council's Geotech Center and externally an advisor to an Africa-focused private equity fund and also a Marine, right? So we'll see him again in the Africa Center in the coming months. Thank you, Minister Musokotwane, for your participation in our 2022 Spring Meetings Dialogue. We were very happy and honored to have you in the Atlantic Council studio. We wish you the best for your discussions with the Bretton Woods institutions. And we wish the best to your government and your people in Zambia. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, and I appreciate you having